Steve is Managing Director of Racing Digital. A lot of you may not know what Racing Digital is, but they run and administer all of British racing. So British racing into the UK economy is a 4 billion business, 4 billion sterling business. So if Steve and his team aren't working, then British racing isn't working.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us firstly. I think Nick gave a bit of an introduction to where we sort of sit in the ecosystem of horse racing. But just to recap, so we're a new company. We were formed 2.5, 3 years ago on the back of a piece of work I actually did when I was at the BHA myself, just looking at how fit for purpose the technology in the sport of horse racing in the UK was for the next 5 to 10 years. Now, probably not surprisingly, in a sport with 250 years of history, that report did not come back favourably to say that we were fit and ready to go. But what was quite surprising out of that was probably the fact that the answer was, you need to start again. You need to go at this, which gave us a bit of an opportunity to go at this almost from a kind of greenfield, maybe slightly brown, perspective on what horse racing looks like digitally going forward. So we ran a tender and we partnered with TEKenable at that point and have been ever since. Just in terms of a bit of background in terms of what we actually do. So we're the official stuff. So we are owners registering in the sport. We're doing entries into races, we're the race program, the fixtures. We're not betting, we're not events, and we're not ticketing. Just a bit of background in terms of what we do. And this was our vision, and actually we set this out 4 years ago, and you know, I'm sure all of you have been involved in setting vision, and often they, about 3 days later, feel like they're massively out of date. This has stuck by us actually through the journey we've been on so far, and the main thing was trying to put the customer at the heart of everything we did in our journey. And our customers are quite interesting because we don't have any competitors, we're fortunate. People have to use our system if they want to play the game of horse racing in the UK. But our customers are, as we'll see later in the presentation, people like racehorse owners who contribute an enormous amount to the sport and to the economy, as Nick said before. But the two bits really I wanted to talk about today, part of that vision, are how we use data in a slightly more intelligent way, and this bit that lots of people have talked about adding value so that people aren't doing your typical administration tasks and consuming time on non-value added activity, really. Just a bit of a background in terms of our product. We've got two very distinct products that we're building, but that is our entire infrastructure. We will end up with a front-facing, shiny, beautiful, and Peter from each and other is here today, who helped us with the designs for our front-facing portal. This is the system that trainers and owners and racecourses will use. And our back office system is a dynamics installation. This is a depiction of a horse race in all of its many attribute glory. Now, everybody thinks that their business is complicated. I'm sure everybody does. We've got 800,000 horses, 500,000 people, 5 million performances, etc., etc. We've weirdly got 44 ways of giving out prize money as well, which causes the TEKenable guys nightmares, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I wanted to just look at our main product. If racing is not competitive, it isn't a sport. So if our races don't have enough runners in them, that does one of two things. It means people don't want to come and watch, and people don't want to bet. And our sport is fundamentally has a relationship with betting and gambling, and the funding streams to the sport are a huge part of that. Now, we currently, and when I say currently, this is before our installation, we spend 95% of our development activity just trying to keep pace with the sport. So if our sport wants to innovate and put new races on, new types to attract, to make the sport more compelling, we're spending 95% of our budget just doing this. So somebody talked before about we should be innovating. We haven't got any capacity to innovate. So our challenge when we approached this was, how do we take this and how do we use dynamics to basically put the power of all of that development time in the hands of the users. And Mark from my team and Bala from TEKenable are here today. They've built a phenomenal product, actually, which takes all of this stuff here and puts it into a sort of dynamics-led rules engine, which even in your wildest dreams, I don't think we could come up with a race that wouldn't be covered by their rules engine in the future. And that in one fell swoop takes away this and means that in the future, when we're actually spending development budget, we're spending development budget on stuff we actually want to do. And not only that, the sport can go forward with confidence. If you've got a backlog like this, people are just not going to bother innovating, and that's a real blocker. So, this fundamentally frees up our sport to think a bit clearer, to think a bit more innovatively in the future. Always nice to have a quote from somebody famous. I think. So I think Noel probably said this in the first 2 weeks of our 6-month discovery phase that we had. And at the time, I'd built a small team and none of us really had any dynamics or low-code experience. If you talk about looking back on things you might have done differently, maybe that might have been an advantage. But Noel said this to us, and it now makes complete and utter sense. And what it means for us is when we think about approaching a development activity, we try and think with that 95% scenario in our head. So how can we put all of the power of what we're trying to do into something in dynamics, which means it's in the control of subject matter experts rather than in control of expensive developers. That also drove us to think about, you get presented with challenges you're trying to fix right now, but actually just thinking one step beyond where could the sport go, where could your business go in 5 to 10 years, and actually can we just build in that little bit of agility to take us and just protect ourselves for the next 5 or 10 years as well. 250 years of horse racing is not good for clean data. However, we've been ruthless in making sure that every bit of data that comes into our new system is clean. And I don't think all of the things we talked about today rely on good, clean, reliable data. And if there's anything we've learned from this, is that we'd probably attack that first rather than second. All of that adds up to something which means we're spending more time creating value than just administrating. Just as a secondary item to that, the race example, there's 2 other people who benefit from that. Firstly, we have a team in Weatherby's in Wellingborough who administrate the sport. Every race that goes through British horse racing, every runner is currently checked. Is checked to see whether they qualify in that race. That's an enormous undertaking. When we go live, we'll have over 95% of races that are zero touch. And that just makes a huge difference to a number of things, obviously. And from the customer's perspective, if I'm a racehorse trainer, if I've got 200 horses in my stable and I want to try and find the best races for those 200 horses, it's an absolute minefield at the minute to try and work through 200 attributes of every race and find the right one. What we're doing with the rules engine is presenting only the information that they possibly can enter and a much more slimmed down list of stuff that they can enter the sport and play the game properly. People talked about, I didn't realise you were all going to talk about levels. If there's a level 0.1, I think that's probably where we were. Only 2 years ago, I use a slightly different scale, but the BHA are the main producer of analytics in our industry, and only 2 years ago we would have been here. People cranking out numerous spreadsheets and often with different definitions of the same thing and telling the outside world a different story. We got called out publicly a few times around having different definitions that we were releasing as a business to the outside world. They've invested quite heavily in some really good data analysts, And what that did for us is it helped create a blueprint of where we wanted our data model to go. So where data analysts were spending months mashing data into the right format, we took their output and went, right, that's how we're going to hold it. We're not going to mash it like that. That's what it's going to be. And that will make a huge difference to them, actually, and let them take analytics further to the next level. And we talk about AI. You know, some of our stuff is just so ripe for AI that it's almost scary, but we're so far away from that point right now. What we will do is bring in all of the things, I think, in this level 3 here about data from multiple sources, clean, measurable results. And then in the future, we've got a team of 5 race planners who are absolutely expert in their job, but essentially we've got 20-30 years of data which says which are the most successful races to put on. That's probably reasonably well cut out for AI and machine learning, I think. Just wanted to give a practical example. Anyone know which race course this is? It's just proof that in the UK there was a day of sunshine last year. So this is York. And Racecourse has received from us as a business a piece of information that says Mrs. Smith is part of a syndicate with a horse that is running today. So there's only one way that the racecourse could interpret that, and that is that Mrs. Smith is a small owner, and they may decide to treat her as such, and they might have premium offers for other people like Nick who own multiple racehorses. So using our data now, this is the sort of thing we're going to be able to present to a racecourse. Mrs. Smith is also what we call a Tier 1 owner. She has 15 horses who are trained within 5 miles of the racecourse. She's a member of 35 partnerships, 12 syndicates, a racing club, and she contributes £750,000 to the industry every year. Crucially, Mrs. Smith's involvement is growing, and she's at the racecourse today with a Mr. Hendricks, who recently has joined 2 syndicates with Mrs. Smith. She prefers red wine, and she's allergic to seafood. It's just a completely different picture for the racecourse. That person arrives at a concierge desk at a racecourse, and you can do whatever you like with that individual. And you can create a much more physical and personalised experience just based on some really simple changes to our data model. I don't know which other industry in the world has their main customer group that contributes so much to the industry, but yet we understand so little about them. We're going to go some way to resolving that, but what I wanted to also show is kind of the ultimate in that understanding of our customers. This is a guy, Josh Apiafi, who has been involved in horse racing for many years. He was marketing director at Betfair in its inception, and Josh is a TV presenter, but his passion really is digital, and his passion is around engaging new audiences and retaining people in the sport. Josh founded a company called Rewards for Racing 13 years ago, and there you'll have seen sort of point system around various, retention, and you earn points if you use this and that. This is racing specific product, and they've got about 1.3 million customers. What Josh would like to do, and we would hope to do with him, is overlay the official racing data with their data set to provide a complete picture of our participants in the sport. And again, that just takes us another step further towards understanding, segmenting, and how we deal with customers. So what's helped us on our journey, and this slide is deliberately bland, almost the restrictive nature of dynamics has in a way helped us. I think if we gave free rein to people around what do you want to collect about a person and what do you want to collect about the roles they have in their sport, if we hadn't had the stop and check moment in dynamics to say, well, this is off the shelf or this is not, And we ask ourselves every time we have the decision, should we bother? Because if every other industry in the world is only doing it like this, why do we think we're special and need to do something different? And actually, it's been a really helpful checkpoint every time we've had that decision to make. The other thing that has majorly helped is we've used Synapse pipelines to migrate that horrendous data. And it has been, I think, the single biggest factor in our project now. I don't know how otherwise we would have migrated the data that we had into the clean format we're going to end up with. This has been great. TEKenable formed us a data team that we've been working with probably for 6 months now. and that's really changed our program for the better. Now, quick quiz. Anybody know what either of these are? No, good. So the chap on the left is Mr. Pareto. As a statistician, I think one of my biggest challenges in this project has been the data we're working with is 90% brilliant and is 10% absolutely dire. And that's where all of our challenge and all our effort has been spent. The one on the right is interesting for any Microsoft people in the room. This is the Dali Arabian, and the Dali Arabian was one of the first 4 horses that thoroughbred racing was built on. This is a record in our database. Or it would be if Microsoft didn't have a date limit. I think we might be the first ever client to break the date of birth being less than 1753 restriction. One we haven't yet got past. Someone asked earlier in the day about things we would have done differently, and I thought I had 3 things that I would definitely do differently if we were approaching this again. And if anyone's starting a journey like this would be my recommended things to think about. Number 1, just get ahead on where your challenges are going to come from in your data set. It's actually easier than you think to just do a review of what's good and what's bad right at the start, because I think you can preempt a lot of the problems we've probably seen. The second one is linked to the final one around mindset, but always think about what's to come. Like, we were given a 3-year window to do our program, and funnily enough, racing has moved on in the 3 years we've been working. So every time you make a decision, really, it's not a decision for now, it's a decision for 5, 10 years' time. Final one, and I think my background's change management, I suppose this is always in my mindset, but mindset on this program, on any of our programs, is so important. Like the ability to think about the future, the ability to think about data, the ability to think with confidence about, if we do something off the shelf, this is going to be fine, this is going to work. And having the confidence in the products that we have available to us is really important. I hope that was useful.